Hey, everybody, it's your boy Jeff Davis here, and I've got a special treat for you. The following interview and discussion is with a man by the name of Robert Kennedy III. I first connected with Robert through a person by the name of Brian Olds. Robert and I are both connected to Brian Olds. Brian is another great guy. Let me tell you, it's been a real pleasure to be connected to Robert, also known as RK3, for well over 5 years now. He's just a wonderful, wonderful guy with a lot of wisdom and a lot to offer this world. He's a leadership and communications expert. He's a professional speaker. He is an author. He's a storyteller and more. This guy does it all. So I really hope you enjoy this because I got a lot out of this discussion. And it was actually to feature him in my blog. So the purpose of this recording was to be able to feature him on my blog. I actually wasn't even originally going to hit record, and Robert encouraged me to hit record. Very glad he did, because now I can share this with you here on YouTube as well. Feel free to go into the description if you'd like the link to the blog post. And my friends, enjoy. This is a real treat. You're going to get a lot out of this, and I will see you at the mountaintop. Question number one for you, Mr. Robert Kennedy III, is how do you maintain your relationship with God amidst your hectic schedule, and do you feel like God is guiding your steps?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I would say I maintain it amidst a schedule. I have really placed it at the forefront of things. So when I wake up, that's the first thing. There's that time for prayer. There's a time for meditation. There's a time for reading the word, devotionals, and really starting things out with that. So the hectic comes after that, right?
Okay.
So I think it's like the relationship that I would have with my wife. I don't want to fit my wife in amongst everything else. She's first before business, before everything else. She needs to be the person that she needs to feel like I'm thinking of her and I'm speaking to her before I take on the cares of any other person or the world at large. So I see my relationship with God like that. And so, I'm able to do what I do because he has led me here. I really believe that anytime that I've personally decided to go left or right, I look back at my life and I see the common thread, and I see how he's kind of rerouted life for me. Even when I decided to kind of go my own way, and it hasn't always been kind of joy, happy, joy.
Yeah.
It hasn't always been easy, but he's turned the challenges into wins and the growth moments and opportunities for me. So I'm grateful for all of that, man.
Beautifully said. Beautifully. I love that, man. I love that. And to make sure I can fit in these questions, I'm just going to keep going here. So that was a home run, and I love this. I'm absorbing a lot as well. Mm-hmm. My next question I want to ask you here is, how are you able to so confidently own your gray hair on your beard? And I ask you that because, no joke. I'm 32. I have some gray hair on both sides in a pretty in a pretty unexpected way, and I actually felt sad about it for a little. And I just wanted to ask you, like, how you own it, because I need to do that as well.
Man, I don't want to say that I always have, because I think, like yourself, the grays begin peeking out at different times during life. And while I didn't have anything on top that was going gray, I would sometimes, if I miss a day of shaving, I'd see these gray speckles like dust on my cheek. And I'm like, my face is dirty. Yeah. And so I think it really happened during the pandemic, or shortly before the pandemic. I'd never grown a beard before. It had a goatee. And of course, there were like gray speckles on the goatee, but it wasn't really visible. So just before the pandemic happened in January or February of 2020, I said, let me start growing out the beard a little bit. And then lockdown happened, and I was like, whatever, let's just let it grow. And I think I just began to embrace it as a new season because you're 32, I'll be 50 next year. And so I just started to look at, okay, what's important for me? What's happening in this season of my life where I, what do I want to create? What's the legacy that I want to leave? And so as I began to ponder those types of things, I began to say, okay, yeah, let me really lock in and embrace and focus on that next season. And in my mind, you know, if God grants me 10 years, this is gonna be the doggone best decade of my life. I'm just gonna live it full out, man. And so as I embrace that, I'm embracing everything that comes with it, whether that's the gray, whether that's, you know, the pain. My son is 15 going on 16, and he's still doing his darndest to beat me at basketball.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, if I don't beat you by the time you're 50, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the thing is, he knows, but he doesn't realize that he's pretty close. He's pretty close. The biggest thing that I've got over him right now is that I'm bigger. I weigh more, so I can still bully ball him a little bit right now, and he doesn't know how to stop that fully yet. And of course, it takes me more days to recover than it does him. But you know, I think it's just embracing new seasons in life, man.
I must say, your son is lucky to have you as a father. I mean that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. As we roll along here, I want to ask you, how do you find the balance and create the link between just flat out adding value like you do in the various platforms, and then the monetization strategies in a way that's effective for your business and not off-putting for others? And I'm just curious, your perspective. Every
Mm.
entrepreneur sort of has their own angle perspective, and I'm just interested in yours.
I don't know that I found a balance, man. I think I don't worry about the monetization as much. Yes, I do need to make money, and I do, as I plan for my year,
Yeah.
think about what are the things that are streams of income for my business and for my family. And I attach value to them. I attach monetary value to them. But I don't work by saying, okay, unless I get paid for this specific thing, I'm not doing it at all. If there are people that need help, if there are questions that are asked to me, people ask me to help them solve a problem,
Yeah.
and I'm able to do it, then I do that. And a lot of times people will ask, hey, do you have a program, or how do I pay you for this? You know, I've gotten checks where people have just been like, hey, can you help us? Can you come do this? Can you help us figure out this thing online? And I help them figure it out. And they're like, how much is this? How do I pay you for this? And I'm like, listen, you know, you don't have to. Or I might say, hey, you know, I'm really supporting this charity right now. I have this link which kind of like pay what you want. And if they choose to donate, or if they choose to send something, then great. If not, you know, I'm not sending anybody an invoice or chasing after people, because I don't want to do that. Right. And
Yeah.
so far, since we're talking about things from a spiritual Christian level here, so far, God's really taken care of us, man. You know, we've got things that we don't enjoy. I don't enjoy paying taxes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but you know, my family is not hungry. We live in a nice home.
Yeah.
Our kids are healthy. We've got food in the refrigerator, gas in the tank. Um, you know, and we've got blessings. We've got luxuries that people both in our country and in other countries don't have. So, you know, that's how I live life. And I also believe in increase. And so, like Jabez, I do ask God to enlarge my territory,
Yeah.
because I believe that there are more people that I can help with an enlarged territory. So just continuing to live like that, man.
That was enlightening. I want to quickly ask you a couple things on this. And one is that when you say you get the question like, "Hey, how do I pay for this?" where you're just genuinely helping. I'm assuming you get that question like after you've already helped, and or
Yes.
yeah. And what came to my mind, I mean, I find this very refreshing. This kind of, I'll go into the part two in a second, but you're
Mhm.
not ever worried about like getting burned or like an unscrupulous person who is sort of using you. Is that ever in your mind, or is it really just genuinely about serving?
I, I mean, it's not my job to go after somebody if they decide to use me. You know, vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
Yeah,
I don't really worry about that end of things. If somebody decides that they're going to use me, what that does is it tells me who they are and
yeah,
what type of person they are. And I believe that if that is the type of person or that's the way that you live life, then what comes to you is what you deserve. Right? So I'm just like, hey, as if I can help people. I mean, I've been told and asked plenty of times, hey, why do you give so much? I mean, why don't you hold back certain information? Why do you do this? Or why do you share all this in your free programs or your free
yeah,
challenges or whatever? And I'm like, listen, I don't know how to hold back. I don't know. I don't know how to say, okay, I'm just going to give you this much and then dangle the keys over your head until you pay me so you can grab the keys. That's just that doesn't make sense for me. It feels like more work. And I'm going to be like, hey, I'm going to give you everything. And if you say, oh my gosh, Robert, you gave me so much, I need to spend more time to break it down because that was a fire hose, that was a whole lot of stuff. Then I'll
yeah.
say, okay, cool. Let's figure out how we can work together to make sure that we both have committed time. But outside of that, I don't worry about being used in that way.
Wow, wow. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. Thank you for sharing that. I have a lot to learn from you with that. I do. I'm processing that for a moment. I'm like, okay, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when I'm giving stuff away for free, I'm getting I don't know, I'm getting feedback or criticism, like, I don't know, like what you said, don't give away so
Mhm.
much. But I'm resonating with you.
Mhm.
But it sounds like, yeah, it sounds like that's working for you, which is refreshing because a lot of people may not have that approach. So
Yeah, and I mean, I don't talk down people who have the message of, hey, know your worth and allow people to have skin in the game and charge for
yeah,
your work. I totally get there is a balance between going around and giving everything away for free and you're suffering and you're just serving everybody.
yeah,
Right. I understand that. But I guess the reason that I don't worry about it is because there is a foundation in my business
yeah,
where a lot of the work is corporate work. And I'll say
yeah,
to, corporations aren't typically asking me to do stuff for free. They'll say, they understand business, you know, um, although there are corporations or organizations that will say, hey, can you come speak at this conference for free? I've got to make a distinction sometimes. I can't speak at every single conference for free because I would go out of business. So
yeah,
sometimes I'm like, well, nope, I'm doing this amount of free conferences this month or this quarter, right? Especially if it's a conference where it's like, come speak for free and you can't share anything else that would lead people to a product or whatever from you. I've got to take note of those things. If we're talking spiritual again, Solomon talks about being wise like a serpent, right?
yeah,
So I've got to really make sure that I operate in a spirit of service, but also operating in a spirit of stewardship of the gift that I do have.
that's excellent. And I actually really love that. I really love that the conversation has taken on this theme, of the spirituality of the
Yeah.
God connection. It's powerful. I'm really glad I do that also. Yeah, it's so important. I mean, I've seen you've done LinkedIn lives, Facebook lives, unbelievable levels of consistency. I actually wanted to ask
Yeah.
you, where do you get all the energy to maintain your business and online presence while yeah, with everything else you do, you obviously your family is a big priority. Where do you get the energy to do all these lives?
Man, I don't know if I have an answer to that. I think it's really about focusing on goals or focusing on what you want to create. I love what I do. I love training and workshopping and speaking. Um, but if I had my dream life, I think I would love to just be in a space where I'm doing like a lot of interviews with people while running my training company,
Yeah,
right? So I let others do some of the work, but I can do I can do the interviewing and the speaking and stuff like this. So
yeah,
at the beginning of last year, once the pandemic hit, I recognized that I was still doing a lot of work that people really didn't know about. And so I said, let me begin to focus on creating content. And then the content is this seed or these little seeds that proliferate all over the place. And some people are saying, oh my gosh, I see you live on LinkedIn all the time. I see you live here all the time. And sometimes I'm really live and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes it's recorded stuff that I play at specific times. But for the most part, I sat down and said, okay, what do I want to create? How can I do that? Well, how can I schedule that works in a way that I enjoy during the week, and then share that with society at large. And then after a little while, if it doesn't work or if I have to make shifts, yeah, then I evaluate and I adjust based
yeah.
on that. But what I want to create is a space or spaces where people can have the opportunity to know that their lives, their experiences, their stories are valuable, and they can transform the world by sharing those stories. And so that's the consistent message that I want to share.
That makes a lot of sense. What does authentic leadership mean to you? And what do you find are some of the biggest challenges with it? And also, how do you find that balance between being honest with someone? You need to sometimes say the truth or often, but also being respectful of their emotions. So, yeah, authentic leadership, navigating those challenges and then delivering it to others in the right way. How do you do that?
Yeah. So I believe authentic leadership means different things to different people. But for me, the core of authentic leadership really is empathy. If
Wow.
you are not a person who embraces or understands empathy, then it's hard for you to be authentic in a way that connects with people. You can be authentic, and when people say authentic, to use the slang term, people like to say, "Yeah, I'm keeping it real, man." So a lot of times you can keep it real while hurting other people. And
Yeah.
so my first thing that I've got to study and embrace, especially from an emotional intelligence standpoint, is the empathy of it all. And I've reached a place, especially in this world, in the United States, where you've got a lot of people throwing haymakers and fire and
Yes.
Molotov cocktails at each other online, right?
Yeah. Wow.
My thing is hurt people. And most people don't throw or hurt others simply because they are these evil villains, and just want to see people hurt. They're trying to defend themselves, and there are things that have happened in their space that they're trying to self-protect against that causes them to lash out. And a lot of people feel like if I lash out first, then I'm just going to hurt somebody and keep them from hurting me, right? Or that's the only language that they understand because they've been hurt so much. So when I see people doing things like that, my first thought now is what had to happen in their life or in their space in order for them to respond that way. And so as I think through that, my first response now is one of concern for them rather than trying to process that they're trying to hurt me. And from a leadership perspective, my job then, from an authentic leadership perspective, my job then becomes to embrace the empathy to find out how people are living and what's happening, what experiences they're having that cause them to operate in the way that they do. And therefore, I need to figure out a way to connect with them. And if I'm able to connect with them, then I can inspire them. And if I can inspire them, then I can motivate them to action.
I would say that that's master's or PhD level stuff. I appreciate you sharing that wisdom. It's so important, and I know that, and I mean I live it, and it's so hard. It is so hard.
Mm-hmm.
You can know it, and you feel the frustration, and I mean I've been growing and evolving, but also like I also admire your maturity there as well,
Mm-hmm.
because that, I mean, yeah, it is so hard to live. You get hurt by someone, and the little kid in you wants to lash back and is upset, and I don't take action on that. But wow, what you said is very, very, very powerful, and also very hard to live.
Yeah, it is, and there's a time to fight. You know, I'm going back to the Bible. Solomon in Ecclesiastes talks about a time for everything.
Yeah.
You know, so we in the United States, we have a lot of different movements. Black Lives Matter. You've got, you know, there's a whole lot of different stuff. There was a lot of Asian hate happening recently, and so many different ethnic groups are really being attacked because of the inability to have empathy, right? Or let me not say the inability, the unwillingness to have empathy. And so, you know, in those cases, yes, you do need a fighting spirit. You do need a champion. You do need someone who will fight for you if you are unable to do it yourself. And so there's a necessity for fighting, but leaders also must be able to balance that fight with the ability to be empathic and understand the different arenas or experiences that people have, so that their driving force isn't obliteration. Their driving force is equity and justice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It actually sounds like if you're going to go PhD level, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad level responses, you could almost respond to someone's lack of empathy with empathy by wondering what occurred in their space to create a human being who, very sadly, it lacks empathy. And actually, I've been doing this lately. I pray for my enemies. I'm piggybacking off what I actually pray at night for my enemies. Would you agree with the statement that I've said before, that the more anger and aggression someone has on the outside, the more pain and sadness they have on the inside?
Oh my, yeah. And it's about the language that we speak. And when I say language, I'm talking about our behaviors, how our responses.
Yeah.
And the more that we experience certain things, the more that we respond in certain ways, that becomes the language that we first reach to when we have certain experiences or we encounter certain situations. And so when I'm online, especially, and I see people having these debates or these back and forths or different things that are for things that I consider to be petty most of the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
While I do have an opinion and I could enter the fray and respond, more often than not, I don't, because that's not the language that I want to practice.
Yeah.
That's not the energy that I want to use, or that's not the space that I want to use my energy in that moment, because I believe that I'm destined for greater things. I believe that I can help people who are hurting in a greater way, and spending my time, you know, just kind of fighting unnecessarily with people who only really are intent upon fighting, you know, is not a great use of my time.
When is a time when your back was up against the wall and you faced a big challenge from life? How did you overcome it, and what would you say to someone who is really struggling with life, especially a lot of people are still now?
Wow, that is a big question. That is like a universal size question.
It is.
You know, I really think that when your back is up against it, you've got to have a solid belief that you're going to be okay, right? It's people that have that saying that I'm going to go for it or die trying.
Yeah.
Right? The worst is to live life and regret in action. It's to sit there and know that you could have done something or feel like you could have done something, but you're experiencing suffering because you decided to do nothing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, it's worse to live life with regret than to die trying to be better, right? And so I'm like, listen, when you're against it, when you've got nothing else to left to lose, give everything you've got. Just decide that you're gonna swing the bat, and if you connect, swing your hardest. If you connect, you'll probably hit a home run. If you miss it, then you miss it. But there's nothing worse than just having the bat on your shoulder, knowing that you could have hit the ball if you swung, but you didn't, and now you're strike three, sitting there stewing, knowing that you just left the bat on your shoulder.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the biggest thing for me. And a lot of people say, oh, you've got to believe in God. And I do believe in God, especially when you're at your lowest. But I also believe that in that belief is strength. And when the Bible in Philippians 4:13 talks about I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, there's a do inside of that, right? I can do. It's not things will happen to me because Christ strengthens me. It's I can do all things. So I've got to do even when my back is against the wall.
Love that. Love that. That's a home run to end with. I'm cool there. That's plenty. This will be a very meaty, and by meaty I mean very thoroughly value add a blog post. And this is awesome. I mean, I learned from all of these conversations, and I certainly learned from this one. And our mutual friend, our dear friend Brian Olds, also he said to me, I'm not kidding with you. He said, Jeff, you have to stay connected to RK3. I'm serious. And I mean, if Brian says it, I have to listen to him. He said there's one guy you want to talk to, it's RK3. So Brian is a mutual friend of ours. And anyway,
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you, brother. I'm so grateful that you thought of me again and have been patient while we look to make this thing happen over the last few months, man. And I'm sincerely praying your best as you're over in Europe